All right, today we are going to actually go into factoring. So now we're going to kind of figure out why we've been learning how to set up the x and what that actually does for us. So we're going to start by factoring when a is equal to 1. It is extremely important that you notice that a is equal to 1. Remember that a is the coefficient multiplied by the x squared term. So this method only works when that a is equal to 1. So let's kind of take a look back. Last unit we did multiplying two binomials. And when we did that, we used two methods. We had the box method and we also had the FOIL method. You decided which one works for you. A lot of us use the box. Remember, we multiplied into the box. That gave us x squared minus 2x, x, and minus 2. We wrote out our terms. And then we combined like terms. That gave us a quadratic. Remember, quadratics are squares. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be kind of undoing this. So we learned how to do the box. Now we're going to learn when we're given a polynomial like that, can we take it and can we undo it to bring it to look something like that? So I want you to get one last practice in. Try number 2. See if you remember how to use that box. Remember, today we're going to be undoing what we originally did. So let's talk about factoring quadratics. Remember, quadratics take the general form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And to solve quadratics, we can't just simply do a solve for x type scenario. We have to actually use a method called factoring. Okay, we can't just simply solve. It's not what we're used to seeing. And so that's what we've been using this x for, was to get us ready to actually solve quadratics. So don't go about this trying to take square roots or trying to solve for x. That doesn't work anymore. We have to use this method called factoring. All right, so let's take a look at our steps. So first step is to make sure that a is equal to 1. Remember, we can't use this method if a is not equal to 1. Step number 2 is to set up your x. We worked on this in the previous notes. We set up our x. Remember, product on top, sum on the bottom. You should by now know how to solve your x. That's the next step, is to solve your x. Your last step then is to write your answers out in factored form. That is the only new thing we're adding today. If you could solve the x yesterday, you're going to do awesome today. All right, so let's take a note. This is going to be really important because this is one of those things where I always make fun of you because I say it a million times, but someone's going to do it anyway. Okay, this is another one of those things. This method only works when a is equal to 1. It does not work if a is not equal to 1. We're going to talk about that one in our next day of notes. So really keep in mind that a has to be equal to 1. You need to remember that. All right, so let's take a look at number 3. So step number 1 is to make sure that a is equal to 1. There's no coefficient out in front, which means the coefficient is 1. Next thing we need to do is set up our x. So the top part here is our a times our c. 1 times 5 is 5. Our sum is our b term, or 6. So now we want to think of things that multiply to 5 and add to 6. Well, things that multiply to 5 are 1 and 5. And that's it. Well, 1 plus 5 is 6, so we can fill out our x. Now, normally here, this is where you stopped. But you notice that that last thing says put into factored form. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do x plus 1 and x plus 5. So I set up two parentheses. I put an x in each parenthesis, and then I put the number. So this is a positive 1, so I put plus 1. Positive 5, so I put plus 5. Let's take a look at number 4. So for number 4, we have product of 16. 1 times 16 is 16. Remember, this only works if our a is equal to 1. The next thing we need to do is set up our sum. And our sum is that b term. So our sum is a negative 10. Now, notice here, positive product, negative sum. So that means both my factors are negative. So let's look at factors of 16. We have negative 1, negative 16. Negative 2, negative 8. Negative 4, negative 4. So we figure out which one adds to negative 10, and it's negative 2 and negative 8. So once we have our x figured out, because our a is equal to 1, we can go ahead and write those factors out. So I get x minus 2, x minus 8. So I took the sign with. I set up two parentheses, put an x in each. I took the sign down here, and I took the sign down to there. Okay, so really make sure that you take the sign with you. Set up two parentheses, put an x in each, and take the signs with you when you write those numbers down from your x. All right, I'm going to do number 5, and I want you to try number 6. So for number 5, we set up our x. Notice that our a is equal to 1, so this process is going to work. 1 times a negative 18 is negative 18, and then our sum is negative 7. So because we have a negative product, we're going to have a positive factor and a negative factor. So let's take a look at 18. We have 1, negative 18, negative 1, positive 18, 2, negative 9, negative 2, 9. I'm going to continue up here. 3, negative 6, negative 3, 6. So if you notice, we need to figure out which one adds to negative 7, and that's this one right here. So I have a positive 2 and a negative 9. Now, once I've filled out my x, I can go ahead and I can write out my parentheses to make my factors. So I have x, taking two parentheses, bring over the plus 2 and the minus 9. Make sure you put those signs in. Don't just make this right here x2. It needs to be x plus 2. So go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try number 6 right now. See if you can do that one on your own. Check to make sure your coefficient is 1. Set up and solve your x. Write out your factors. All right. Here's a good question. Are all quadratics factorable? Can we solve everything? And the answer is no. We're not going to be able to do everything. Sometimes your x doesn't work. If your x doesn't work, that means the quadratic is not factorable. Quadratics are not factorable if there's no way that the x is going to work. Okay, you've tried everything. You've written out all the factors. You've changed your pluses and minuses, and you still can't get it to work. So instead of writing an answer, writing things out in factored form, we either write not factorable or NF. Okay, so let's take a look at what that would look like. So I'm going to try number 7. I want you guys to try number 8. So for number 7, multiply my first one and the last one. So 1 times 2 is 2, and then we want to add to 2. So I'm looking at factors of 2. Well, I have 1 and 2. That's it. 1 plus 2 is 3. So that doesn't equal my sum. Well, see, is there a way we can do minus signs? No. Positive product, positive sum. Both my signs have to be positive. So there's no way I can get that to work. So it's not factorable. So make sure I know that. Don't just leave your answer blank. If you leave your answer blank, then I'm going to think you didn't do the problem. So if you find out that it's not factorable, you need to tell me so on your sheet. Otherwise, I'm going to think you just skipped the problem. So that concludes our video today. I want you to go ahead and try number 8, and then make sure you take the quiz after.